Happy birthday, South African wine. It is a huge day for wine in South Africa because today in 1659, as you just saw from that little clip, Jan van Riebeeck raised a glass and said, "Thanks, praise be to God, wine is made for the first time from grapes from the Cape." And that means, if my numbers are right, we're about 364 harvest today is very much on one particular part of South Africa where a huge evening of celebration awaits. For the last number of years, Groot Constantia had a real special occasion. They've not only celebrated this remarkable day, I think we're probably the only country in the world that can lay claim to a specific birthday around the start of our wine industry, but also to pay tribute to some really cool people who've been involved in the industry and to raise a glass to some of the greats of South African wine. So we're going to be celebrating them. We don't know who is going to be acknowledged later on tonight, but we're going to speak to some rather cool people from the wine industry who are going to be at the party down in Constantia this evening. Sadly, I am not there. I'm up in Johannesburg where the rain is coming down, and that's a blessing for a birthday of this magnitude, but we'll get a sense of not just why this day is quite so important for the South African wine industry, but why celebrating people, as will be done this evening, is also of such consequence. So I'm going to introduce you to our very special guests, who you'll know very well. They're all good friends of Dan Really Likes Wine, and I'll introduce you to them in just a moment as we head south to the Cape and look ahead to a magical evening at Groot Constantia, brimming with history and vintages of great wine. But first of all, just a quick look at some of the latest wine news. Now, this I wanted to bring out, it's a little self-indulgent. This is a dinner I held on Monday evening, some international guests, and I wanted to showcase a range of vintage, a range of terroir, and a range of varietal from across South Africa. And by the end of the night, guests from Australia, from New Zealand, from Turkey, from Pretoria, were all, I think dazzled was a pretty good word, because every one of these wines showed themselves just superbly. Albarino from Newton Johnson, that was 2019, I think, the grape we still don't do a huge amount of here in South Africa, but the Newton Johnson team, Nadia, Gordon, Bevan, producing a fabulous example of the wine more commonly found in Spain and Portugal and the Greater Iberian Peninsula. Some Patatfontein Rhenenborn, who's just become a member of the Cape Winemakers Guild, following in his father's footsteps. That's his Montague Chenin from 2015, and I've had a few Chenins in the kind of 7 to 10 year mark over the last few weeks, and they've all been a lovely drinking window. Same vintage, the Beauchard Finlayson Hymanskat Chardonnay, just a delightful balance between the fruits and the acid, a wine that comes from a splendid site that Hymanskat used for a number of wines, including a fabulous bubbles that is made up in Tulbach. So some great wine there, the Krona. Then some 2013 Scorpion. You don't need to say too much more about Urban Sadi. It was glorious. 2014 Crystallum. And together with the wine next to it, that was the 2016 Follow the Line. Not a plain Cinsault. I think it's a little bit of Touriga Nacional, a touch of Syrah on that, but still lighter styles that had benefited from a few years in bottle. We often drink our lighter reds a little too quickly, where aging them can be of huge benefit. Dani Stadler, who launched some new wine today. That's his big powerhouse Pinotage. to showcase to the visitors. Not all pinotage is undrinkable. Some Bloodite Shiraz, probably too young this one, but guests had heard of it, wanted to try some. Some 11 Thelema Cab, which drank beautifully. Throwing back Cordoba, the old Thai Bosch 2002, and that was full of youth and lust and liveliness. And then a proper start of finish at Oloroso, the 100-point dessert wine, the straw wine, a thunderous finish to a really good evening, a really nice celebration of South African wine from across the board. So well done, South Africa. All right, harvest celebration. This is Inzamade. They won a number of nods in the prescient reports of Wine Mag last year, and they have got on the 15th of April their harvest celebration out on the farm. They're doing some really cool wine. They're a really cool bunch of people, and they're just starting to pop up on various wine radars and in a number of awards and competitions. I think this is going to be a great deal of fun. You can head over to Inzamade to get your tickets. Well, they do say quickly. I think those will be selling out rather fast. And then this, we've done this story a couple of times on the show. Those are the Molyneux on the left, Gaynor Fredericks in the middle, together with the team from Great Heart, which is a subsidiary, the right word, but it's part of the Molyneux team. But this is what they've set up, funded, supplied the grapes and the technical know-how and all of the logistical support required for Gaynor to make wine, which goes into a company that is owned in its entirety by the farm workers at Molyneux, and they share in the proceeds from that wine. And it's really good wine as well. And given it comes from the grapes that the Molyneux make a lot of their other far more expensive wine from, if you want to effectively taste some Molyneux and taste it from the same terroir at a greatly reduced price than the Great Heart wines that empower, as they say, people from the team, then that's one to look out for. So well done the Molyneux, well done Gaynor, well done to Great Heart. Great wine, great price, and most importantly, really, really good platform. Right, well, let's head into today. So who do we have on the show? Well, we thought because it is a celebration of such consequence, we would bring in two of the most celebrated, the most elegant, the most highly respected, the most erudite, and the generally most appreciated and loved of the women in South African wine. And unfortunately, they were all busy. And so instead, we've got a right pair of reprobates who generally have a couple of bottles of Chardonnay for breakfast and go from there. And every time they're on the show, add a great deal of fun and entertainment, but also a huge amount of knowledge. We've got a third guest joining us a little later, and we'll bring him in as soon as he arrives. But first of all, kicking us off back again, we do love having a Maylu Lambert joins the show, and Winnie Bowman is with us as well. In fact, our third guest too, Matome, is here as well from Wines of South Africa. So Maylu, Winnie and Matome, a warm welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, Matome.
Winnie, hi. Hello, Malu. Good to be here. Hello, Dan.
Oh, guys, I have to say, this is by some distance the best dressed collection of people we've ever had on the show. Granted, we regularly have people like Brouwer Raats and Ardie Badenhorst, so fashion stakes are not always going to be the highest. But you're all looking fabulous, and I've dressed up a touch as well because this is a really important day. And Matome, I know it's one that you are celebrating down at Groot Constantia, a space that's really close to you as a board member, but also as an icon of South African wine on a massive, massive day. Before we talk a little bit about why Groot Constantia is so important today, just give us a little bit more of a scope of why having this birthday, why celebrating the harvest today means quite so much to South African wine.
First of all, a happy birthday to the South African wine industry, to all the winemakers, the wine farms, and the industry at large, local, international players. Happy birthday, and I say cheers to you with that. Just to kickstart, I think we are in a very celebratory mode at the moment. I think the fact that historically South Africa is the only country, and I've searched that, the only country that's got a birth date on record. Jan Frederick recorded on his journal that on this day, pressing of the wine actually took place. So in essence, it's a good experience for us all. I think more than anything is the fact that we are celebrating the harvest. What's important in all of this is that it's not just about drinking bubbles, but also creating what will be a memorable moments for the entire industry. But above all, is the fact that it's a South African heritage, which I think we're all thrilled to be part of. I am part of it, and I hope everybody that's celebrating feels just as much.
And that theme of celebration, that joy in the South African wine community today, the collective skip in our step, is what brings you together with Winnie and Melu and many, many others to Groot Constantia this evening. Why Groot Constantia? And for people for whom the estate, the name, the history are maybe not so familiar, why is Groot Constantia just so important to our wine story?
Shall I carry on with that? I think by virtue of this being a national treasury, I think the heritage of South African wine sits at Groot Constantia. And in fact that, with this celebration has been commemorated in so many ways over the years, that Groot Constantia has taken it over and has been running with it for so many years. This is critical to ensure that we pass on the heritage. It's retained and appreciated by all South Africans, but also those who play in the space of South Africa globally, to know that they are highly appreciated. And the reality is that it is our pride that we need to maintain. And I think the heritage at Groot Constantia is evidence that we are doing the right job in ensuring that we don't miss out on opportunities that have been created for the future generation.
Is that then perhaps, Matumi, let me throw out a slightly more challenging question. Is that maybe something we need to do a bit more of an industry where we've often championed we're a great new world producer, we sit up as well as anything from Australia or New Zealand or California or South America, when in fact we've got wine estates that are older than many of the big names in Bordeaux, that outdate some of the prime estates and brands out of Burgundy. Should we be making more of this? Should we be making sure that the world knows actually South African wine's been around for quite a while?
Without doubt, I think reality is that 364 years of wine production is evidence enough that we are, first of all, sustainable as a country that's wine producing. But above all, yes, we need to create more of these opportunities from an educational point of view, but also to retain the pride of that. As much as we may be seen as a new world wine producing region, we have a history. So we are a combination of two. It's a plus for us as South Africa to position ourselves in the global space. And many other factors, obviously, the fact that this is a beautiful country. And I think we are still to be actually recognized globally as a key player in the industry. We may not be number one in terms of production, but we have number one in terms of many things on offer relating to what South Africa has got to offer. So we need to create more of these events, more support from other stakeholders within the industry, outside of the industry, to retain the heritage. It is a South African pride. And you're right in saying we should be creating more of these events. To me, it should not just be a commemoration based on their birthday only, but we should create more of these events throughout the year. There's so much that we need to expose fellow South Africans, but also the world, about what South Africa has got to offer. This is a brilliant platform. It's a celebration for everybody, and I take it from a South African perspective that it has to be done beyond what we're doing. More can be done. We're not where we want to be. I think we still have a long way to go.
It's a lovely way, being earlier in the year, to get us off to a really good start, but we need to seize that momentum and do more with it. Matumi's spot on there. We'll come back to a bit more of Groot Constantia in a moment. Let's head over to Winnie, who I think Decanter magazine voted her most dangerous woman in wine 3 times running. If you've ever been tasting with her, you will know exactly why. Winnie, welcome. Lovely to have you back on the show. But what does this mean to you today? You're such a part of the fabric of the South African wine industry. Is it just simply something cool to raise a glass to and carry on with it, or is it a bit more meaningful than that?
Well, Dan, thank you for having me, and of course, happy birthday to South Africa, and actually to all of us, because we are the ones that are tasting all these wonderful wines. And I'm just very sorry that I didn't get the email to that dinner that you had, the showing all those beautiful wines to your guests, but I suppose it's in the post, as they say. For me, I think it's fantastic, and I agree with Matumi that we should be celebrating it much more often and every day, because first of all, we are the only country that knows exactly when our birthday is. Secondly, Groot Constantia is a national monument, in my view. It's just such a beautiful place to visit, and since the red bus has decided to make a stop at Groot Constantia, of course, that has brought the heritage of the area and winemaking as such in South Africa more to our visitors. And I mean, I might be mistaken, but I know that they have around about 1 million visitors at Groot Constantia every year, which is an enormous amount of people that are exposed to this history, and they can walk around all those very old vineyards. And of course, we've also got, apart from Jan van Riebeeck writing his words on the first grapes that were crushed, we've also got all those old vineyards and landmarks as described by Van der Stel, who was really South Africa's first viticulturist. I mean, he recorded all the seasons and the things that happened in the vineyards, and that was all on Constantia. And of course, Constantia is there because Van der Stel, looked around to see where viticulture would be a good place to start, because of course in the company's garden, it's hell of a windy and not ideal conditions for grapes. And of course, he wanted to make quality grapes in order to sell them. So I love the idea that the function is at Groot Constantia, that we celebrate Groot Constantia as a landmark and expose it to all our visitors who absolutely love going there.
And they love going there to try some fabulous wine, to enjoy a beautiful part of the world, but also by extension to enjoy an industry that's had so many people play such a big role. And that's a huge part in tonight, Winnie, and part of the reason why you are dressed up quite so glamorously and magnificently, because it is some of your peers this evening who will be taking a bow as I think it's 4 awards get handed out to recognize people who've had an exceptional influence in South African wine.
Absolutely, and we should be proud of those people and make more of it, because I think very often people are awarded something and then you never hear about it again. And it's lovely to bring that back home into the general knowledge of wine consumers, wine lovers, and of course people who visit our beautiful country, because there are some unbelievable people who have done brilliant work in South Africa in the wine industry. And one of the most special ones for me is the unsung wine workers, because they are the ones that are often overlooked in the face of somebody that is much more in the eye of the consumer, etc. And without our workers, of course, we have nothing. So tonight is also a celebration to them and every single person that touches a grape or a water point or anything on a farm. It's all for them as well tonight.
We had a year ago, Winnie, Carmen Stevens getting acknowledged for the role she's played in winemaking, but also Francois Fillieux, Denise Stubbs, Christine Rudman. And what I love about this is that it's not just the big flash winemaker who's got loads of 100-pointers and 5-star wines and is known around the world, but it's the people who form really a day-to-day part of that broader industry that we're so proud to be part of.
Correct, and that is what is so special, is that all these award winners or people that are recognized, I should rather say, come from different parts of the wine industry, which also shows you that it's from everywhere. It's the writers, it's the tasters, it's the competitions, it's people like Denise, who I admire so much, because she has done such unbelievable work at Demersfontein and empowering the people of the area. And let me tell you something, you don't burn her toast. So she runs a tight ship and has done exceptionally well. And of course, Francois Fillieux, wonderful guy. I love all his chicken stories every year at the Vinpro open day, when he talks about the harvest and everything in a chicken analogy. Of course, Carmen, we all know, has made such inroads for winemakers of color, and particularly women, which is also very important to recognize. And of course, Christine Rudman, I mean, she's been around forever. She had a very big hand in setting up the Cape Wine Academy. And so all the knowledge just is shared and disseminated, and people drink more wine, and that's really what we want. And in fact, just on that note of drinking more wine, I just got a note from Morena, from Woza Matomi's colleague, to say that in South Africa we drink 8.16 liter of wine per person per year. So I just want to say thank you to all the people whose wine I'm drinking, and you.
8.6 litres. I think you've got Winnie by lunchtime on most days, so definitely doing far to hold on South Africa. Speaking of people who have the occasional glass, Maylee, welcome back. Lovely to have you back on the show quite so quickly. Geared up for a really special night. What does this night mean to you, both as somebody who has spent so much time in the wine industry, but also I think probably feels that the wine industry has given you so much and the still relatively short and young career that you've made so much out of?
Thank you, Dan, and happy birthday to you and the South African wine industry. You both are 3 centuries old now today. Sorry, I just had to. But to get back to your question, it means everything. You know, I'm currently reading the book by Andrew Jefford, Drinking with the Valkyries. And in the beginning pages, he talks about how wine is the only way that we have to really know ourselves. Like, it's the most intimate way to know ourselves, to know other places, to know the regions. And when I think about South Africa and I think about the wines that I've drank over the course of my career of drinking wine, that they're markers and moments in time. And I want to send that message out into the world. This is how you know South African wine. This is how you know South Africa, through our wines. These are our places. These are our people. These are our stories. I mean, what he says is so beautiful. We literally consume wine. We take it into our bodies. It's the most intimate way to know the world. And I would love South Africa to know, I would love the world to know South Africa in that way. And I think wine has a real opportunity to tell our story.
You get to tell that story as well, not just through your own writing, but also on the travels you do, judging away and getting to wine events around the world. The historic element, the heritage element of South African wine, is that known and appreciated enough amongst the broader wine community? Do people in Portugal, when you touched on for a Concours Mondial, or people in London when you're off to judge a South African wine show, do they realize just how old we are, how much we've done, how much we can look back on?
So the answer is no, because we haven't had the opportunity to do that legwork, I think. This kind of work takes decades to do, but it's starting to filter down. What I have noticed is that there's this discussion about old versus new world, and we definitely have been making wine for 364 years, but we also have the opportunity of being quite new at it in many ways. And we've had a resurrection of sorts in the last 3 decades. And I think we need to take that to our advantage and use all the innovation we can, because we're not stuck in the bureaucracy that happens in the old world. We're not in the trenches and we're not kind of tied down to old beliefs and value systems. We can head forth and make, new pathways. But to answer your question,
well, I'm sure as your travels unfold this year, you'll continue spreading that part of the South African wine gospel. Speaking of communicating, am I right, Maylee? Because you do occasionally roll up your sleeves and get stuck into the odd debate on social media. Were you and Groot Constantia having a quiet discussion on Twitter not that long ago?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Dan. But to answer your previous question, what I wanted to say, and you asked me about the heritage and the history of, the record keeping. So what Winnie touched on earlier was actually quite interesting. That, actually Matame touched on it, that we have a record of South Africa's first wine crush, basically through old Oom Jan. What's also interesting is that we have that record through the Old Vine Project of vineyards planted 1900s, I think, and a little bit behind that, but mostly the 1900s upwards. No other country in the world has that. And I think the Old Vine Project has done an incredible job of really spreading that gospel, and it's getting South Africa really noticed. A I was doing some research today, and the Chenin Blanc is by far our most planted grape varietal. And you'll be astonished to know that of the almost 17,000 hectares, half of that is old vine. Half of the majority of our biggest crop is old vine. And I think that is absolutely special. And I do think that word is spreading. And thank you to the record keepers of the past. So happy birthday to you, ghosts of the past.
Some vintage wine crushers. I've of course got my own vintage wine crush, and she's on the show this evening, but we'll come back to Winnie in a moment. I want to jump over to Motome and just raise a question on Groot Constantia and the model around it, because Motome, you've got something that's not just historic and of such great value to our South African wine heritage, but it has been crafted in terms of its ownership, in terms of its business model, to be something both quite unique and I think something to be very proud of. Give us an understanding of how this all works, how that came about, and why it is of such value.
It being a national treasure, and obviously this structure is governed by proper governance. I think more than anything, we have a board of directors that oversee that there's compliance, and it's a national treasury, let's put it that way. It's not individually owned or privately owned, but it's a national treasury. So in essence, there is a huge responsibility towards ensuring this becomes a success, and success that it is. And the actual evidence thereof is that because it's run by the actually corporate people who are actually committed to ensuring that it's a success. So the model here is that it's not just a business, but it's a national treasury as it's run.
The estate is somewhere I love to go and visit, and it is the host for this evening's function. Tell us a little bit more from your perspective, Motome, on this function at Groot Constantia, and to a degree, I suppose, echoing the words of Winnie, why celebrating some of the people who will be celebrated tonight is such an important part of the record keeping and the acknowledgement of South African wine.
And with it being obviously a celebrating moment, most important is that the fact that there are categories that have been set in terms of recognizing those who are visionaries in ensuring that the industry is sustainable, the leadership. So all of these areas, the viticulture and the viticulture area, so these are categories in which people will be recognized in the efforts and the commitments to growing the industry. But what is key is also the acknowledgement of those who are very much involved, who do it passionately, who do it with commitment. And I think that way we'll be able to encourage many others who are not in the industry to see them having potential. What is key important, I think, as a national treasury is to be an exemplary platform. And this platform created is to showcase what South Africa's got to offer. We are a very structured, very committed, united industry. And in so many ways over the years, we've actually proven that. And this platform definitely creates that opportunity for us to showcase by also recognizing the key stakeholders. So it's not just a celebration, it's also about creating what would be opportunities for others going forward. It is an event of note, and rightfully, as I said, we should create more of these kind of events. But obviously we need to structure it well, and it's balanced because it coincides well with the birthday and as well as the harvest. So in essence, we are in a space where we want to encourage as many people to come on board. And I feel comfortable that we are on the right track in line with that.
To get 2 more events, you've got to finish off this one first, which means persuading my other 2 guests to get to bed at some stage tomorrow morning, which is probably your biggest challenge tonight, Motome. You'll also have the opportunity, though, speaking to not just them, but everyone else this evening, to engage on both the high points, of which there are so many, but also the areas which we regard as being challenging, the areas where, as an industry, we can perhaps do a little more, do a little better. Winnie, 360 odd vintages in. It is a day of great celebration, but it's also a day where we can take the opportunity to say, right, we've done really well, but there's a bit more that we can do. What for you would be in your state of the nation on the birthday address, and the areas where you think South African wine collectively, because we're all part of it, can perhaps do a little more and ensure that an already fantastic product can be just a little bit more so?
I think this platform is this. Sorry, Winnie, carry on. Is it Winnie's point?
Okay. Well, I think that we've made very big inroads into many countries, particularly Africa, which is for me very special because that is the continent that we live on. But if we think of where we are probably most well known is England, and that is, or I should rather say the United Kingdom, I suppose, and that is due to quite a few people who have taken an interest in our wines. We've got Greg Sherwood, who's always talking about South African wine. We've got Tim Atkin, who brings out his annual report. We've, of course, got all the awards that we win at the international competitions in the UK. And then another national treasure in my eyes must be Eben Sadi, because Eben Sadi is really the person who put the hip and happening wines on the international stage. And it's interesting to me that we are exporting more wines to different countries. I'd love to know the figures of each country. I know Matomi might have that at his fingertips. But I'd like to see us in many more countries and be the preferred choice on the wine menu. So when you go to a restaurant, it's not just to page past the South African page, but to look specifically at the South African page and let those wines be something interesting and new. And I can just tell you that we've just, as you know, had the Italian Gambero Rosso team here, and they do a roadshow with their top performing vineyards. And every year every time they've been here, well, they've only been here twice, but every time they want to have a special set of visits arranged. And one of the first one was Shannon, which was in 2016. And this one 2 weeks ago, last week, was they only wanted to taste Pinotage, meet Pinotage makers, drink Pinotage wines. And most of them had never been to South Africa before, and B, had never tasted Pinotage before. So, of course, we roped in the king of Pinotage, Beyers, and every single person bought a bottle of Beyers Kloof Pinotage, be it the bottom end or the top end. They loved it, they loved him, and they loved the stories. And I think it's through the stories that we can also tell people more about our country, and just the feedback from people from those winemakers who'd never been to South Africa before. They were all booking a trip to come back again because they just absolutely loved South Africa. Some went on to do safaris and stuff like that. But I think we've got to tell our stories. Our stories are so unique and so beautiful, and people should be aware of them. And of course, the other interesting thing is, you were talking about Great Heart earlier on. Great Heart wines from Mullineux was first launched in England, and it was sold out within minutes of it hitting the Waitrose shelf. So again, there was a story of a well-known winemaker that got the traction. And as you say, they're not as expensive as their other wines. So everybody gets a little piece of Mullineux. And I think that was lovely, because those wines, as you quite rightly pointed out, are also made from the grapes that go into their very fancy, more revered wines. And that's how we get people involved and people talking about our wines. And perhaps once they've tasted, say, a Pinotage, they might taste something else that comes from South Africa and build up a relationship with South African wines. And that's what we really want.
Maëlie, if I can ask you to pick up on that with your thoughts. I think some great points, as always, from Winnie on where we can look to do even better and go even further. What's on Maëlie's wish list for South African wine 2023 in terms of improving what we have at the moment?
I think I would like more visibility in terms of the transformation projects we do in the wine industry. I think a lot of them don't get a lot of airtime at all. Pebbles projects, all the stuff that's happened in Villera, there's a lot of good work being done, and I think that's something that needs to be talked about more. It makes the wine more palatable when you understand the fuller story. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, I would like to see a bigger volume brand but that's high quality, and that can really spread the gospel of South African wine. So at the moment, Leeuwinkale, for example, in the Swartland, has built this mammoth cellar, which incorporates all kinds of capabilities for different styles of wine, and there are a lot of quality considerations that go into that. And I think that's important, because I think creating a proper world brand for South Africa, and a couple of them, is going to spread the gospel really well, because as much as we all enjoy these fabulous wines in this incredible place, the message doesn't leave our shores often. I would like to see the message in the bottle leave our shores more regularly. I would like a dominating world brand of Chenin or Syrah.
All right. Well, let's put that down on the list of things to see if South Africa as a wine team can pull off by the end of the year, or at least head in the right direction. We are celebrating though today, so let's get a celebratory note from you as well, Mailu, and we'll get the same from Winnie in a moment. What are you really celebrating today? What in particular about South African wine as it stands? February 2, 2023 is putting the biggest of smiles on the face of South Africa's finest young wine writer.
For me personally, wine has given me my life. It's given me my joy. It's given me my career. It's given me people I so love to listen to and talk to. It's an absolute dream job for me to be in the wine industry. So thank you, South African Wine, for having me, and thank you for delighting me. I absolutely love this journey, and it's given me my life. But other than that, I also want to delight people. So, people that aren't as au fait with wine, I love to talk to, and I love to introduce things, stories and winemakers and producers, and that's my job. It's my job to tell stories. So you keep making wine, South Africa, I'll keep telling stories.
And drinking a few glasses of it along the way just to do that job. Winnie, what about you? As you look back on your wonderful career in wine, you get to this point, celebrating this particular harvest on this day, going into a really special night tonight at Groot Constantia. What are you really celebrating? What makes you particularly happy about where the South African wine industry finds itself today?
Well, Dan, I'm with Mailu on telling the stories and all the wonderful people that I have met. And I actually just want to remind Mailu, I think I was the first person she ever interviewed for a magazine, Wine of the Month Club. And I remember we were both quite nervous because I was worried she was going to say something, might be something rude that I could or would have said, but she was very good. For me, I think I fell into wine by accident. I'm actually a scientist by profession, and I've learned so much. I've met so many wonderful people. I have traveled to so many wonderful parts of the world and seen so many things, all to do with wine. And for me, the biggest pleasure about South African wine at the moment is when one of my friends from another country sends me a picture on WhatsApp or something and say, do you know this wine? We had this last night and it was absolutely marvelous. And where can I get it in the US, or where can I get it in Poland, or where can I get it in France or Italy? And that to me is very special, because we need to bring a smile to our wine drinkers' faces as well. And it's lovely that people from other countries enjoy this wine. I agree with Mailu. We need a very big volume, high quality brand in order to spread the love a little bit easier, because Eben doesn't make too much wine and everybody wants Eben's wine or the Molyneux's wines, and we need those wines to spread the quality message, because that to me was always a problem in the past. When I worked in England in the late 90s, I hardly recognized the South African labels because they were all import labels and they were all £3 to £5 a bottle. And it was only when Neil Ellis, I think it was, stepped in with a high price wine, did people start drinking it. But it was hard. It was a hard sell, because South Africa was always seen as a value producer rather than a quality producer. And my wish is that it should all be quality, doesn't matter at what price point.
It's a noble goal to have. It's one that I think probably sits on the horizon for Matome and his Woza team as they attempt to guide our industry into markets around the world, and perhaps markets a little closer to home than we've often given thought to. And Matome, I think it's a really nice one to include as we come to the end of our show and send you guys off to the dance floor in your celebrations tonight. We had some great conversations, not just with you, but with some journalists and some influential wine figures from East and from West Africa. And other than almost starting a fight by asking the Ghanaians and Nigerians who made better jollof rice, we had a really, really good selection of ideas and thoughts of where South African wine was in Africa and where it could possibly go forward. I would suggest that a really big thing for you to be celebrating this year is the progress that South Africa's made across the continent, but also the opportunity that exists for so many of our winemakers and producers to take advantage of, to perhaps not need to spend a fortune trying to get to New York or trying to go and battle the brands of Italy and Spain and France by finding homes in Europe, but looking just onto the continent and finding new homes for South African brands a little closer to our own borders.
Without doubt. And then one of the first things I want to highlight to Winnie and Malu's point that, we have a legacy. We need to ride on the legacy that has been created with the history that we have. But over and above, we need to carry it through. We need to make sure that this legacy does not die. That's why we have platforms such as these of that of Growth Constantia, creating opportunities of exposure that we have today, which is what we want to see actually happening in advancing positioning of brand South Africa in many other emerging markets. Africa, you speak, which is my passion, is fastest growing. I must say fastest growing solely because annually we see growth of, engaging people in wine, educating them in wine through programs that we run at Wines of South Africa. But then in addition, giving them an opportunity to explore African product, which is South African wine, and start looking at anything outside of South African wine, because it is their African product. We always put it to them that way. Passion and also opportunities of premiumization. One of the things we spoke of, how do we then position South Africa in such a way that it's appreciated and accepted as the premium wine producing region? It begins with what we expose and what we share in markets so that people start appreciating for what it is, quality. South Africa's got that, and it's a legacy I think we need to, going forward, carry it with us. Opportunities, I always say, are in Africa. It's right by our doorstep. We need to actually take advantage of that. And Africa is open for business. So I actually say on this day of celebration, one of the things that we need to look and focus into is advancing the industry within the continent.
And doing that is in the excellent hands of Matome and his team. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that particular story this year. Just before we do wrap up and let you guys get off to your big night at Growth Constantia, just finally from all of you, Winnie, we'll kick off from you as an entrenched member of our wine industry. Harvest number 364. What's your message to the South African wine industry on this birthday in celebration? What would you like to say to our South African winemakers as we raise a glass to them all today?
Well, obviously, huge congratulations. And I am so impressed with the way in which our winemakers embrace every vintage and every harvest and try to make the very best out of those grapes that come in that year. So I would like to see the best wine ever this year, more of it, and in more mouths.
I think that's a pretty good vision to have. Also, I just noticed right at the end there, every single copy of 50 Shades of Grey on Winnie's bookshelf, but perhaps that's not entirely surprising. Maile, what's your word to the wine industry today, to our winemakers, our wine producers on this very special birthday?
First of all, I think it's one of the earliest on record for the last 50 years. I'm guesstimating there. But apparently it's just one of the healthiest. So it's been an incredible harvest from everybody I'm speaking to. The grapes are coming in. They're beautiful. I think it's going to be amazing. And I concur with Winnie that I love the enthusiasm of this industry. I love how we get celebratory, we get into the cellar, we get into the vineyard, and it's hands-on work. And this is still very much a hands-on kind of country. Sure, there's machine harvesting in the more bulk estates, but the majority of the estates in South Africa are boutique, and they are hands-on. There are people sleeping on cellar floors. There is listening to the drip of the juice and the bubble and all the magic that creates. So thank you for your dedication. Thank you for sleeping in the cellar. Thank you very much. And enjoy the snoek braai post-harvest, because I know you're going to have it.
Very much a tradition with South African winemakers when they finally finish their harvest. It ran extremely late in 2022. How will it finish off in 2023? We'll look out for a few shows over the coming weeks as we have a look at the harvest and how it is unfolding. Also, if you jump over to Wine Mag, there's a fascinating article from Melu on the role of AI, in particular ChatGPT, on how wine writing may or may not be influenced. If you want to know how it works, well, actually, there was a piece that the Chenin Blanc Association did where they got a poem written in the style of Melu Lambert, and I have to say it was almost word perfect. I could not tell the difference. So go and have a look for that. Matomi, last one from you, and I'd like to ask you two final ones, but the question in terms of from the Woza perspective, what are you guys saying to us South African winemakers as we celebrate this birthday and look ahead to this harvest and to this year?
We're very excited. We're thrilled with the fact that we actually part of this. Wines of South Africa is an integral part of, driving the agenda of amplifying and positioning brand South Africa globally. And I think this is a moment. It doesn't just become a Wines of South Africa celebration or just the industry celebration. We take it out throughout the actual markets where we're active in. And it's for that reason that I'm glad that this year and even last year, this event can be actually viewed and be watched virtually, which means people can actually access it and view it as well. On sawineharvest.co.za, if you look through that, you should be able to join in this and experience what we are experiencing at Groot Constantia. But most important, I think most key thing is that the collaboration within the industry. I'd just like to say cheers to everyone. There is no way we're going to not make it in the world out there. We may not be where we want to be, but we're heading there as an industry. And we can only do so if we club it together. Thank you.
And speaking of together, the last thing I do need to ask you about before you disappear, Matomi, is Germany. Provine is now not too far away at all on the back of Cape Wine. I think there's a huge amount of excitement in the South African presence at Provine. How's it shaping up for us?
Taking shape lovely, and actually a lot of producers are looking forward to be in that space. It is a platform through which they get to meet many others. I'll be there myself because there's plenty of the contingent of the wine importers and traders that will be coming in from the continent. We look forward to it, and I think it would be another opportunity for wine producers to go showcase their product.
It will indeed, and it will be fueled by the energy from nights like tonight, days like today, as Groot Constantia showcases one of the many reasons to celebrate this terrific South African wine industry of ours. It is birthday day for South African wine, 1659, when Jan van Riebeeck first proclaimed those grapes produced and wine made in South Africa. And a few years on, I think we've never been better. Guys, thank you all very much. Have a lovely, lovely evening. Enjoy it. Matomi, make sure there's some security on hand for one or two guests. I won't mention any names in particular, but have a lovely, lovely evening. Thanks for being part of the show, and thanks just for showcasing why today and the heritage attached to it is quite so important, but also giving a very personal touch, because all three of you have got a unique and very important role within our industry, and it's great to be able to showcase that on the show. So Matomi, Winnie, Melu, thank you all very much, and enjoy your night, and I won't be phoning any of you before lunchtime tomorrow.
Thanks,
Good
Dan.
point. Yes, thanks, ladies.
Happy birthday, South African wine.
Cheers.
Cheerio, guys. There we go. Matomi looking after Wines of South Africa for Africa. Melu Lee Ritter, a young wine writer of the year and general force for good in the wine world. And Winnie Bowman, complete institution, just one of my favorite people. That wraps us up for today. I'm dashing off for a wine dinner myself tonight. Sadly not done a Groot Constantia, but I'll make the best of it up in Johannesburg. And I will see you all on Monday. We've got a rather cool and slightly different show. Look out for some celebrity faces on Monday as the show comes to you from my other show. It is the Dan Nichols Show Invitational in support of the Laureate Sport for Good Foundation, our annual golf event at the Royal Johannesburg Club. And we'll have a number of wine-drinking celebrities explaining just why wine means so much to them. A few of them comedians, should be some fun. And next Thursday, we'll be live from Fancourt at the Dimension Data Pro-Am with Boschendal as we drink some great wine in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Harvest's coming up, and there is a rather important announcement on Dan Really Likes Wine coming up towards the end of the month. Keep an eye out for that. Until then, happy birthday. Have a great night at Groot Constantia if you're there. And look out for news of, I think it's 4 people being celebrated with some very special awards, and they couldn't be more deserving of them. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.